Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhaṃ Dhammāṃ Saṅghāṃ namasami. Hello and welcome. Āsālha Pūjā Day, sometimes now referred to as Dharma Day. The beginnings of Dharma. So I am Bhante Dharmarakita Bhikkhu. My name is written along the edge of the blackboard there, but more information, as it said, about me, how I came to be here and where I come from, is in the channel description page if you click About. So please go there, where some of your first impression questions may be already answered. And I want to talk to you today about Āsālha Pūjā Day, which is often referred to, as I just said, Dharma Day, because it reflects on the occasion when the Buddha, after his enlightenment under the Bodhi tree, which we talked about back in May, the Uposatha, the full moon day of May, when we celebrated Wesak, the day we commemorate the Buddha's birth, enlightenment and parinibbana. And subsequent to that day, few months later, June, July, a couple of months later, the Buddha set off, having at first decided that what he had realized through his enlightenment was going to be quite difficult for anyone to really comprehend, and that he might just go away and live in a cave and practice alone. And what would have been we refer to now as a Pacceka Buddha, so a perfectly enlightened, fully enlightened being who decides not to teach, but to just go and sit in quiet and enjoy the rest of their days in practice. But a Brahmin goddess, Sahampati, came down to the Buddha and persuaded him that he should go and share this wisdom. And at first, the Buddha was reluctant, but acquiesced on the pronouncement from Sahampati that there were few people with little dust in their eyes that could understand the Dharma, meaning that there were at least a few people whom would get to grips with it quite quickly. And as we know, like anything, it's sow a seed and it can spread quite quickly. So being persuaded, his first thoughts were to find his original teachers. I've forgotten their names, the two teachers he aspired to when he began his practice, when he first set out from his life of luxury to a life of asceticism. But then on hearing that they had died, he decided to seek out his fellow practitioners he'd joined up with after hearing their teachings, who were the 5 ascetics continuing to practice in northeast India. But he had left because he had decided that the tapas practices, the real asceticism, trying to burn away the defilements, our root defilements, greed, hatred, delusion, lobha, dosa, moha. There will be some Pali words in this talk to continue building our lists, our Pali word lists that we can use as reference points. But I will give you the English translations as best I can and as simply as I can, more for my own benefit than anyone else's. I like things to be simple. So he decided to go and seek out his fellow practitioners, whom had rather left him, or he had left them, because he'd begun to eat again a little, and decided, this emaciation of his body and practically killing himself over a practice wasn't really working, which is where he went off and sought and found and ended up becoming enlightened under the Bodhi tree in Bodh Gaya that we talked about back in May. So he set off towards what's now called Varanasi, Benares as it was then. And Benares, as it is now, Varanasi, is a holy centre. It's right on a large, wide stretch of the Ganga River, the River Ganges, as we know it. And many, many holy seekers, sadhus, all kinds of ascetics, and other religions also, many religions, meet up there. It's a very ancient city, predating even Buddhism by thousands of years. So it's one of the most ancient cities in the world, and a very beautiful and very fascinating and interesting place to visit if ever you get the opportunity. And it's fortunately situated quite close, about 10, equivalent of 10 miles, or 12 or something kilometres from what was called then Nisipatana, the deer park, now is called Sarnath, which is one of the 4 main Buddhist holy sites that people on a Buddhist holy site pilgrimage would visit. Now, I spent some time there myself, a long time ago now, 10 years ago, and this is where I first met a Sri Lankan monk, a member of the Mahabodhi Sangha, into which I later ordained, and stayed with him, ate with him, discussed Dharma with him, and had my real first taste of Theravada Buddhism, because prior to that I'd been investigating all of the other kinds. But all Buddhism, whatever tradition, whatever school, northern or southern, is all based around the core teachings of the Buddha. And this is what this day, Dharma, teachings of the Buddha, as well as everything else, nature and the universe, is about. So he set off to find his ascetic friends in Varanasi, and on arriving in Varanasi, Varanasi, I keep forgetting the name, Baras, whatever it is. It's such a very, very busy place. It's so hectic, even to this day. You can get lost there literally for days on end in little alleyways with thousands of people all rushing and going to places, and pujas and ceremonies and fire worshippers and people standing on one leg, sleeping on beds of nails, everything going on all around you. And then many, many burning ghats where they burn the dead at the edge of the river Ganges and then sweep the ashes back down into the water, because all your ashes of a certain faith get swept into this river the Ganges River, the river Ganga, in order to purify, as people do go into this river by their rites and rituals, practices to purify themselves of their sins and wrongdoings, and try and cleanse themselves of these tapas, these defilements through a ritual, which we've come to learn through the practice of Buddhism isn't the way to improve and purify our minds which are inherently and already pure, but covered up with all of the vicissitudes of life and all we take on through our formative years and education and growing up through education, through business life, through work life, through family life, through social life. Everything we do is about gaining and acquiring and covering up, really, our basic nature, our Buddha nature, if you like, our pure selves. Unlike some religions, we believe we're born as babies as a result of previous lives, causes and conditions put in place, but essentially pure, with a fresh start. Not born sinners, but born pure. Everything else comes about later. So with his discovery, his enlightenment, the Buddha set off to find his fellow practitioners, and not finding them in Varanasi, and understandably so, he heard where they might be over in this about 10 kilometers away, 10 miles away, Isipatana, the deer park, Sarnath, which is a much more peaceful and tranquil and quiet place. It is still a deer park, parts of it. So you can go there to this day, and it's still a quiet, relatively quiet town. But the park itself is protected and now like a World Heritage Site. So you have to get a little ticket and go in for the day. But it's kept peaceful and quiet. You'll see stupas. You'll see many people meditating, and you'll even see the old kuti, or the remains, the foundations of the kuti where the Buddha lived and stayed, and you'll see where he first taught. So going to find these fellow practitioners, he had the idea, as being now an enlightened Buddha, to share what he'd learned, as he'd been persuaded to do so, with those fellow practitioners, knowing that they were ardently trying to attain enlightenment themselves, or freedom from suffering themselves. At first they kind of ignored him. He got there, he found it. You walk into Sarnath now to this day, or you go on a tuk-tuk or a bus or a bicycle rickshaw, and you'll see on the left there's a big hill where he first bumped into them. But he eventually came there and found them, and they kind of ignored him because he had left them, he'd given up the practices that they were all doing together and gone his own way. But he was able to, by his very presence and demeanour, persuade them that he'd become enlightened. He hadn't gone off as a Pacceka Buddha to meditate in a cave, but had something valuable to share with them. So they prepared him a seat and he spoke. And this is what is described as setting the wheel in motion, or the Dhammacakka Sutta. The Dhammacakka Sutta is the Buddha's first discourse. It is the core teachings of Buddhism. It is the Four Noble Truths, the Noble Eightfold Path, and it can really be said that anything else in the suttas is commentary on that discourse. So it is the Dharma. You'll see often depicted as the Buddhist emblem an 8-spoked wheel. This represents the 8 sections of the Noble Eightfold Path. We know as right view, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, right meditation, and has commonly been accepted as a symbol of Buddhism. Because on setting this wheel in motion, the Buddha, or his disciples that became his first disciples, his fellow practitioners, the 5 ascetics, heard something that could not be ignored. It was that valuable. So if you have your chanting books, if you don't have your chanting books, please email me and I will send you the link. You will find the Dhammacakka Sutta in English translation, a description. It is a description of this first discourse. It is this very first discourse. In this very first discourse, the Buddha proclaims his discovery. The Four Noble Truths, there's suffering, dukkha. There is a cause of suffering, samudaya. An end of suffering, nirodha. and the path leading to the end of suffering, magga. So if you remember dukkha, samudaya, nirodha, magga. Magga means path, nirodha is cessation. Could also be considered to be nibbana, the cessation of suffering. This was his first realization he passed on to his ascetics. The cause of suffering being divided into three main areas, which he describes in this sutta. I'm not going to recite, chant the sutta. You can read that for yourselves. I'll do that on another occasion in my chanting. But read it in your own language, understand it. It is all you need to know about how to attain to enlightenment. Everything else is just writings about that. We don't want to read about it, we want to attain to it through our practice. So this is why it's such a valuable teaching. So the cause of suffering we've come to know as craving or tanha, but this is in three ways, split three ways. Another short list, there's kama tanha, which is craving for sensual pleasure, sensual desire. There is bhava tanha, which is craving for existence or becoming, craving to become something. I want to become the best professor in engineering in my university, for instance. I want to become the richest person in the world. I want to become the most beautiful model, the greatest sportsman. Becoming, part of really enhancing and focusing your attention on what we've been talking about recently, these five khandhas, this physical body and thinking brain, rather than seeing the spiritual side of life, the qualities we can develop that are far more long-term, far more useful and far more beneficial, even at the end of our lives, when all of those other materialistic gains are of no use whatsoever. And vibhava tanha, which is the opposite of that, which is annihilation, or non-existence. So experiencing suffering and just not wanting to be at all. So these really represent ignorance, avijja, because just wanting it not to be at all, annihilation, just leads to further rebirth. But recognizing, seeing, understanding the cause, as the Buddha teaches so clearly in this sutta, is the way we come to eradicate that cause, and that is through practicing the Noble Eightfold Path. He explains in the sutta aging, sickness and death, representative of anicca, dukkha and anatta, and therefore alluding to samaditthi, right view, the first stage of this Noble Eightfold Path. But like the wheel, it isn't step to step to step, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. It is a practice that is holistic. We put it all together in categories of moral virtue, sila, meditation, samadhi, and the development of wisdom, panya. And this is our most important list. Apart from those three categories, sila, samadhi, panya, which is the practice, we need to break it down in order to ensure that all of our daily activities of body, speech and mind are running in accordance with this Noble Eightfold Path. Samaditthi, right view. Samasankappo, right intention. Samavacca, right speech. Samakamanto, right action. Sama awijo, right livelihood, samavayamo, right effort, samasati, right mindfulness, samasamadhi, right meditation. Now if you didn't get those, don't worry, chanting book, they're listed. Just like that, that's how the Buddha taught the Noble Eightfold Path. A simple list, right view, right intention, right action, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, right meditation. This is the path to the cessation of suffering, Nirodha or Nibbana. It's that simple, the Dhammacakka Sutta. So you can see, once this was heard, it cannot be unheard. It's known, isn't it? When we fully understand that, and these practitioners who'd been practicing their ascetic practices ardently for so long now, longer than even the Buddha had for 6 years, were easily able to understand this clarity of explanation of what essentially is the truth, the Four Noble Truths, including the path leading to the cessation of suffering, the end of suffering in this lifetime, and no further clinging to these aggregates, the khandhas, the 5 khandhas, and therefore no further rebirth. And Venerable Kondanya was able, on just hearing this through his previous practice and probably previous lives of practice, to immediately become Sotapanna, attain to the first stage of enlightenment, just on hearing this Dhammacakka Sutta. Now we hear it in Sri Lanka here every Monday chanted, every morning, several times, over and over again. We chant it ourselves over and over again. We read it, we recite it, we talk about it, but do we necessarily become Sotapannas? Probably not, because a lot of us are thinking about it, analysing it. If we'd only been meditating and doing nothing else for a long, long time, and someone with the clarity of teaching like the Buddha came along and explained to us there's suffering, a cause of suffering, an end of suffering, and a path leading to the end of suffering, which is simply right intention, right view, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, effort, mindfulness and meditation. We too, perhaps, would be able to abandon wrong view, Sakkaya Ditthi, personality view, abandon the idea of these rites and rituals that go on in the river Ganga, all of this cleansing and praying to gods and hoping for a better life or a better future rebirth, rather than doing something about it here and now in the present moment through good actions of body, speech and mind, rites and rituals. We'd abandon that Sakkaya Ditthi personality view. We'd abandon those rites and rituals. We'd have the knowledge, the understanding, the Four Noble Truths as here. That is Sotapanna, that is stream entry, that is the first stage of enlightenment. He then became Venerable Kondanda. Kondanda became known as Anya Kondanda, a very familiar name, the Buddha's first disciple to become enlightened, the first stage of enlightenment. And that really was the origins of the Sangha. That was the first formation of the Sangha. And you can go to Sarnath, and I've sat there in where is the Buddha's kuti, where Anya Kondanda and his fellow disciples would have sat. You can circumambulate the sutta, the stupas there, whatever practices you wish. The deer don't wander around, they're fenced off, but you can go and see the deer. And it's a very beautiful and quiet place, and you can reminisce and consider what an important place it is through what actually happened there. This wheel was set in motion. This wheel is still rolling today, 2,569 years later. That seed, that first formation of the Sangha, then which in February, so some months later, when we have Sangha Day, Magha Pūjā, which I've also spoken about and no doubt will again when that time comes, the full moon day of February. These are the three main Buddhist holy days. There are many more, but the significant ones are Wesak, Āsālha Pūjā and Magha Pūjā. Buddha Day, Dharma Day, Sangha Day. And these in geographical places are represented by Bodh Gaya or Lumbini, the place where the Buddha was born. Bodh Gaya, where he was enlightened. Kushinaga, where he was finally died, finally attained to Parinibbana. But before that, Sanat, where he set this wheel in motion through this teaching of the simple teaching, the Dhammacakka Sutta, where his first disciple, just hearing those simple words, became enlightened. If you hear nothing else in the Dhammacakka Sutta, and I really encourage you to read it. I've read it, I wouldn't know how many times, probably thousands, but even today I've read it again. In English. Because it's like poetry, it's a poem. Just the chanting form, not the full sutta in the Sutta Pitaka. It gets, a little repetitive, but that's the beauty of it. It makes it easy to understand, easy to learn. And this is the way in the Pali language, which is as close as we can probably get to understanding the way the Buddha would have spoken, the language he would have used. So when we hear it in the Pali words, in the Pali language, we can really feel it when we know the meaning of it in our own mother tongue. And it's then that you are really knowing the Four Noble Truths. And what happens at this time? So this is also known, or tomorrow, the next day, the day after Āsālha Pūjā, when we celebrate this wheel being set in motion, the Buddha's first discourse. Of course, there are so many, thousands of discourses that came after this. But one can say whether they're from the Buddha himself or his noble disciples, they're commentaries on this first discourse, elaborations on this first discourse, breaking down aspects of the path, Magha. But after celebrating on this day, we enter what is known as the Vasa, or the Rains Retreat. Now this came about after having established the Sangha, and as you know, the Buddha taught then for 45 years. So a long, long, long time. Travelling all over northeast India. Picking up disciples. There's no YouTube, no writing in Dharma discourses, essays or books. It was all verbally spoken. And then subsequently written down, having been handed down by being verbally exchanged amongst disciples and people listening, which is why it has this sort of prose nature. It's an easy way to learn it, understand it, and pass it on without too much variation. But he travelled all around for this 45 years, teaching and establishing the Sangha, as many followers came to join him. And at first the Vinaya was just some very, the Vada Patimokkha was just some very simple basic rules that one leads a morally virtuous life and develops one's mind skillfully, avoiding unskillful actions. And it was suffice to say, but with trial and error and putting everything into practice over the 45 years, far more rules were developed for the Sangha itself, eventually becoming the 227 rules for the bhikkhus and the 311 rules for the bhikkhunis, we call the Patimokkha, which is just a small part of the overall Vinaya Pitaka, the first of the three baskets, the three collections of books that are the Tipitaka. We have the Vinaya Pitaka, the Sutta Pitaka, and the Abhidharma, a vast collection, volumes of books. But we're talking mainly in Dharma about aspects of the Sutta Pitaka, the well-known discourses of the Sutta Pitaka. The Vinaya Pitaka is for the monastic communities, the Sangha. The Abhidharma is for the intellectuals who want to have further commentary and examination on the Sutta Pitaka. But what we can all do is practice, and that comes from the Sutta Pitaka. So the rules became and developed for the Sangha, and one thing that became evident was that during this rains retreat, as it's called, this Vasa, which means rains, in Sinhala language, Vasa is rain, I think, is the monsoon season in India. Not so much here, it's sort of throughout Asia, the monsoon is in different times all over the place. But in northeast India at this time, the monsoon season was the 3 months between the full moon of July and the full moon of October. So, what happens? It's raining a lot. There are lots of rice paddies. And, excuse me,
not going?
No.
Problem?
I'm talking just at the moment to someone, okay? Sukhi hotu. Sadhu, sadhu. So, with the rains coming for 3 months, the monsoon time, the Buddha recognized that his monks, his Sangha, couldn't be just wandering around the countryside as they normally do, going from town to town, location to location, where they would reside, abide in either under trees, in the open air, in caves, or in empty buildings, and they would just practice. But there came a time when it was raining so much that not only for their own welfare, that for the protection of the crops through which they'd be walking, the rice paddies and so on and so forth, they would need to stop walking around, so just stay in one place. So he determined this period of time, this 3 months, as the time, the Vasa, when we remain in one location, and only through exceptional circumstances are we allowed to go anywhere else. Of course, we still go on Pindapata on this one day, on each day during this time, which is just walking into the village and the town, just as the man who's just come to see me, because this morning I've been asked to attend, they have here, on the anniversary of someone's death, but it's called Marana, like we have Marana Nusati, contemplation of death. They have a Marana Daya, which is like a death anniversary day or death days. So 7 days after someone's died, 3 months after someone's died, 1 year, 7 years, and so many multiples of years. They invite monks from different sanghas to come to the home of the deceased or the relatives of that deceased, and they offer you lunch, dana, various offerings to create merit, punya, boon, whatever you call it in your country, but merits, which they dedicate in honor of their departed relatives. And today I've been invited on one of those. This being the day before that I'm recording this talk, actual Āsālha Pūjā, or the day before Āsālha Pūjā, yes. So in that sense, I'm going off to this lunch, so I'm not going on Pindapata today. So as you notice, someone just came along. Where are you? What I tried to tell as many people as possible I wouldn't be coming today, but because I go every day without fail, if I don't go for any particular reason, which is very seldom, they will come, as they just have. And they're wondering why I'm sitting here talking to myself, because not everybody understands what this is that I'm doing here right now. So anyway, he decided that we don't go other than from arms around anywhere in this 3-month period. In fact, if we do have to go somewhere, say our mother was sick or dying or something like that, and we had to go and attend to them, we can go for a maximum of 6 nights. So that's no more than 7 days, so a week really. But we'd have to leave and be back to our place we'd dedicated to the place we will spend the Vasa within that time period. But this is only under exceptional circumstances. So I will make the determination, the adhitthana, to stay here in this location for the Vasa, as I did this time last year. As a monk living alone in solitude, it's as simple as that. I make that determination. If you are more than one monk, so 4 monks, or 5, the 4 other monks, a quorum, I think it has to be 5 in total, then you are, rather than a monk in solitude practicing, a sangha, abiding, staying in one place for that 3-month period, the rains retreat, a Vasa, and therefore are entitled through the rules in the Vinaya to have what's called a katina ceremony. So I'll talk about that more in October. I will be invited to many katina ceremonies around in other monasteries. The monastery next door, in the buildings just the other way there, and around this town and further afield. But I tend not to go to so many of those events, like I don't tend to go to many of these death anniversary events. I leave that for the local monks whom are used to traditional cultural devotional practices that I'm not so used to, and they enjoy them, they benefit from them, and it's part of their pastoral care duties, part of their responsibilities, and it's part of the structure of their support structure, what they rely on for keeping their sangha and their monasteries, their temples, their educational systems and their basic requisites going. So I don't like to get too interfering of that, because we're quite independent with my practice here in the way we operate. We being us, you watching, me talking, us together sharing the Dharma. So I will spend my Vasa here for the next rains, and that is the day after Āsālha Pūjā, when the Vasa begins. It's also the time after which that Vasa, one as a bhikkhu or a bhikkhuni, clocks up another year in the robes. So regardless of what date in the year you were ordained, your years in ordination, number of Vasas it's called, or pansas in Thailand, is determined by the number of rains retreats you've experienced and have kept. If you shot off somewhere else halfway through the rains to live somewhere in a different place, that Vasa doesn't count. You have to remain put in order to be living in accordance with the Vinaya. Now this gave monks a wonderful opportunity to, because they don't have to worry about where they're going to be staying tomorrow night as Charaka monks, wandering ascetics. Because they know they can go on alms round, or indeed food will be brought to them at their monastery, they can rest in peace with nothing much more to do than go on alms round in the morning and, like myself, just practice their meditation each and every day. Some have asked if I'll be continuing with these talks through the rains retreats, those that know that sometimes monks go into a period of retreat during this time. Well, I will continue with these talks because I'm in a period of retreat all of the time, all of the year round. Nothing much changes. Whilst I'm supported and able to stay in this community, whilst they need me, they want me to be here, because I, in exchange for the little food they give me, each and every one of them each day, which amounts to more than sufficient for my needs, give them the opportunity to do that, to give dana, to visit them at their homes each and every morning through Pindapata, through alms round, to give them blessings. If people wish, take precepts, refuge in the triple gem and precepts. And they appreciate that. It means they don't have to go travelling to the temple or even visit their local temples where they feel obliged to dress up and take dana and take more elaborate offerings and things like that. They can, in the environment of their own home, as I will be doing today, going on this lunch, visit them there. But normally that's not part of my routine, part of my activities. It's just today that I'm doing that as a separate thing entirely. And it's only going to be the third one I've done since I've been here, which is nearly 2 years. So I make the determination to stay here and live my Vasa without a katina, because there aren't 3 or 4 other monks living here. My nearest temple, which is about less than 5 minutes walk that way, there will be 4 or 5 monks, however many. I can never remember whether it's 4 or 5. I think it's 4 others, including yourself, so it's a total of 5 monks, like the 5 ascetics. And they, if they don't have, they only have 3 living there, they will bring in another 2 in order that they can have a big, elaborate katina ceremony at the end of it, where many people will bring all sorts of goods, and they've got a lot of nice items in their temple there. They live in quite a comfortable situation, let's say. Whereas my practices are more along the lines of the Dutanga monk. Now the Buddha allowed 13 Dutanga practices after giving up the tapas practices, the ascetic practices that he was with his fellow practitioners, the 5 ascetics, doing, and deciding that the ascetic way of life didn't work any more than the sensual, luxurious way of life, and discovered the middle path, that is the Noble Eightfold Path, the middle way. He thought, well, for serious practitioners, and for those, especially like myself, who came to the practice late in life, who have more ingrained defilements, more ingrained greed, hatred and delusion, which are habits we develop through our lives. So the longer your life, the later you ordain, the more ingrained those habits are. You need some more harsh practices, tapas practices, to burn away those defilements. So he allowed 13 Dutanga practices, including sitting up all night, wearing 1 set of robes, eating 1 meal. And I've spoken about them before, and you can watch the talk on the 13 Dutanga practices. But my own practices throughout the year are of a retreat nature. Firstly, I live in solitude. I live in an empty building, which has been made good by the locals to make it habitable, but just that, nothing luxurious in here. I sleep on the floor. I only have 1 set of robes. I only eat the 1 meal a day, that I get in my bowl on Pindapata, on alms round, and various other allowable ascetic practices that I practice all year round, not just in retreat time. But it does afford us the opportunity to, even if we're always in the same location, to demark it as a time, 3 months, where we can make a determination. So in answer to the question, I will be, yes, continuing with these talks, which take no time at all. I only make 3 a week, and they take as long as you are watching the video for. There's no editing, there's no planning. It's just sit and speak, turn it off, upload, finished. So it takes no time at all to share the Dharma with you. I respond to your comments as a result of those talks and the emails I receive. Again, that takes no more than an hour out of each day. But after my meal, I sit, I read the emails, I read the comments, and I reply to the emails personally, and the comments I copy for discussion in a questions and answers talk video later on. That takes no more than an hour, as I say. So very little time of mine is taken up with this activity of sharing Dharma. But I hope, from the comments I receive anyway, it certainly seems that that is useful. And as long as it's useful, I'll continue to do just that. So this is where I will be for the Vasa. My own determination is to learn a little bit more, or a little bit, because I know really none, Sinhali language or Sinhalese language, not to teach Dharma in Sinhalese, because I think Dharma should be taught in your mother tongue, to others listening in their mother tongue, where at all possible. because of course it's quite a complex subject to understand. When you're translating words from Pali into your own mother tongue, then to be doing that whilst thinking about another language also only complicates it further. And these days that isn't necessary. So unless you're just quoting suttas, in which case it's fine, if you can speak enough of a language to read that language from a book or recite it from your memory, then that's just recitation. But to discuss, to talk, to give Dharma talks without preconceived ideas and consideration planning, without reading something, it's better, I think, in your mother tongue. But if I learnt a little Sinhalese, I would be able to specifically just learn some Sinhali words for meditation practices. Maybe give some guided meditation to people here in their own language. So I was thinking of learning some words like relax and peace and calm and tranquility, and just simple single words that one can use in guided meditations, so that I can help people here a little bit more than I'm doing already by giving something back to them, not only with sharing of surplus food that's given to me with people who need it, but also maybe helping them, not by teaching them Dharma. They have a lot of access to Dharma throughout all of the temples and monasteries and monks that are very skilled in teaching from the suttas. The many people here whom are learning the teachings of the Buddha right from the earliest time they begin school and throughout the rest of their lives, being it culturally integrated into society here in this Buddhist country. But to teach them a little bit more of the other side of the practice, that is just simple meditation, samasati, samasamadhi, right mindfulness, right meditation. I'd like to give some of that back to the locals here. And I've recently had quite a number more visitors coming from other countries that are visiting Sri Lanka or passing through, who've come to see me. I'm very grateful for that. I'm very happy to see them. They've heard about me, I've spoken to them through correspondence, and they visited me here. But as it is, I'm living in a nice little building here, which has been freely offered to me. With your support, we were able to provide them with some money. You were able to provide them with some money just to finish it off, to put a roof and to finish off the floor, put some water in, and make it perfectly habitable as my kuti, which is where these talks are coming from. And people come, they meet me, they visit me here, but I'm very limited in what I can offer them by way of other facilities. So they come as they're passing through and they go. Perhaps when they need to use the toilet, that's time to go. But they do spend a long time. We have a good talk, and it's a great opportunity to share the Dharma with foreign, I'm foreign, but other foreign visitors coming to Sri Lanka. But also I like it when local Sri Lankans can come, whom aren't going to want to hear me babble on in my own mother tongue about Dharma, but may wish to just meditate. So the building there next door, and I'm moving on to what I'm planning for my 3 months, Vasa. These are my determinations. First, to learn Sinhali enough to give guided meditations in that language, along with English. And therefore introduce people and help people to meditate. Help people on this path. Help people with samasati, samasamadhi. Not through intellectual discourse, but through practical sitting with them and showing them how to enjoy meditation for real. So learn enough Sinhali to do that, as well as in English. And the next thing, where to do that. We can't do it in this room. It's fine for my own practice, my meditation, as is out there on my veranda. But for most people, They need something a little cooler, a little less distracting. As you see, animals, cats, dogs, even people come and go through here because it's open. I don't treat it as mine, it's everybody's. Even when I sleep, the doors are open, the windows are open. Anyone can just pass through. There's nothing really private about here. My washroom in a little corner there is only screened by an old robe. So it's very free and easy, open, but very comfortable and very much appreciated. I'm very grateful for it. But next door, there's this big old house, which you've probably heard noises coming from. It's got some things stored in there, but it's about 150 years old, I'm told, where the family that owned this land originally come from, lived in. Subsequent generations have grown up, married and built their own properties nearby. But that's fallen into dilapidation. Literally bits of it fall off occasionally. You'll hear the bangs as those bits fall off. If a monkey jumps on the roof, a tile falls off. And they've said, I suggested, I hinted, we don't ask, and I'm not asking now, I'm suggesting, hinting really, that it would make an ideal meditation hall. A Dharma hall if you like, but a meditation hall primarily. Because it's a large room, it's got a couple of rooms off it, but it's primarily just one large room, about 3 times the size of this room, maybe 4 times the size of this room, with a very high ceiling, roof like this, very thick walls, nice, beautiful, but small windows. I will try and put some pictures of it on here, but it would make a very nice, cool environment for meditation. And they've said, if I would like to use it as a meditation hall, I probably can, but we need to make it safe. So that's going to probably be involving putting a roof on it, as they did here, and something with the walls and something with the floors, but nothing more than that. And I've got enough faith, saddha, to know that if I continue for this 3 months with my meditation, that this will, as a result of causes and conditions put in place, karma, karma actions and vipaka, results of those actions, will in its own way manifest itself. Like this place where I've come to stay in, where I will spend my second Vasa here in Sri Lanka, living, I think this Dharma hall, meditation hall, will also manifest itself. If you'd like to send continue with your donations to that end, then they will be directed to that cause. It's not going to cost very much at all to put a new roof on and to clean it up and make it available for locals who want to come and just sit and meditate. Not so much for their devotional practice, not a temple, not a place of worship, although there will be a Buddha, Rupa, it will look as if it is a temple, but not consecrated, no relics necessarily, because there's plenty of that available for people. But in those temples, in those places, there's not as much availability as people who visited me have described, and what I've seen for myself, for someone to just go and sit and do nothing and meditate for the day. So, or the night. So that's what my determination is. If I can help in any way, we can help in any way, there are locals willing to assist, to make that happen. That's what I'd like to do over this next few months. And maybe at the end of the Vasa, there will be an occasion when we can come together in that Dharma hall for another Dharma talk to see what we've created from our own contributions, our own practice mainly, our own determination, our own faith, to let that manifest itself. Now already, without asking, and I'm not going to fundraise, that is totally not in my nature, got enough there to get that started, get the ball rolling. And I think that is something that I can, out of gratitude for my hospitality and the kindness that's been afforded me here to stay in Sri Lanka, can offer back to the local community and for future generations to come, other monks who may come and live here after me, from my own Sangha in India, for instance, or other travellers from other countries, monastics that is, who would like to stay here in the future when I'm no longer here, when I'm gone, when I'm dead, when I'm buried, or burned, cremated, sprinkled in the Ganges, or swept into the sea, the Indian Ocean, which is most likely there. Whatever that may be, whatever the future holds, a building that's been there for 150 years and is beginning just now to fall down could probably be kept going for another 150 years and also sustain many people from not only locally in Sri Lanka, but other people passing through and visiting, sustain that meditation practice, a place to meditate. So that's just an idea in the making. It's not really even in the process of discussion yet, other than the owners of the land here. I've mentioned it and very relaxed. They've got some people together to see what it would entail, how much it would cost just to put that all together there. So that's something I'm thinking of doing so I won't be sitting here studying or doing more meditation through the Vasa, because I'm doing so much meditation anyway, and I'm not that really much of a studier. But I will be, through my actions, hopefully directing people towards their efforts towards providing something just there. This was the kitchen to that house. The house itself is just a big room with a high roof and thick walls. Ideal Dharma hall, very cool. It's also surrounded by beautiful jungly area, which can be some walking meditation paths for walking up and down, covered with trees, a canopy of trees. That is there. It's all there already. It's not going to entail acquiring any land, acquiring any building materials, just a bit of tender, loving care and time. I've got plenty of time to help with that. There are people around that we can provide a little bit of money to finish things off. And as you know, monks don't use money, but any contributions received online go to a non-profit organisation which can be used to help that, support actions like that. Normally speaking, essential Sangha requisites, shelter, clothing, food, medicine, and things like visas and travel. But whilst there's none of that really necessary at the moment, we can direct it towards just sorting out that building for people, other people's benefit, and hopefully if you ever get the chance to visit, your benefit also. So that's the project for this Vasa. A little bit of a form, rupa, or physical project, a manifestation. Let's together with sadha, faith, manifest a meditation hall for Sri Lankan people, for foreign visitors, for any practitioners, not for a retreat, but if you're passing by and visiting me, somewhere you can sit and meditate also. A basic washroom, facilities like that you can use. If you're staying in the area, there's plenty of accommodation. We don't need to provide that. There's ranging from hostels to hotels, all different scales. Near and far. That's your choice. But that would be just something that will be useful for people, I think. This is not an appeal, this is not me asking, it's my thinking out loud and suggestion for an activity that I'm going to be thinking about over the Vasa and sharing that with you as I share all of my experiences in this monastic life. So the middle path, the middle way, the Dhammacakka Sutta. This is Āsālha Pūjā. This is what we've learned today from our teacher, the Buddha. Through his efforts in sharing the Dharma, his compassion to do that over 45 years, and his legacy, the establishment of the Dharma, his teachings, and the continuation of that and their teachings through the Sangha to this day, 2,569 years later, where myself and other monks, bhikkhus and bhikkhunis, continue in that Vinaya tradition, practicing, sharing the Dharma, and supporting lay practitioners in their practice as they support us in ours, as you support me in mine, without trying to attain anything great, but to mutually benefit from a shared practice, developing a shared saddha, faith, and confidence in that Dharma, which is, after all, that confidence, that saddha, confidence, faith, is the basis of enlightenment. Full understanding, appreciation, knowing, knowledge of, experientially, the Four Noble Truths, through its practice on this Noble Eightfold Path. I hope that's useful. If it's useful, use it, please. Put it into practice, experience it. If not, just let it go. Any more information about myself, this channel, you can find in the main channel description, as I said at the beginning, or click the About button. It's all there, including playlists which divide the talks into Dharma talks or questions and answers talks. If you just really want to hear talks about Dharma and not other people's questions, that's fine. Look at Dharma talks, that playlist. There's plenty of them. If you like questions and answers, because they help us reflect on our own doubts, which is from where we derive wisdom, then you can just listen to questions and answers, or both. But I'll continue with these talks as long as you continue to ask me to provide them for you. They help me, but as long as they help you, it's even better. So thank you for watching. I hope it's useful. Until next time, be happy and stay well. Sukhi Hotu.